Conesti, how are ye? Welcome to the Candlelit Tales podcast and a very special interview podcast where we are interviewing Aindrias de Staic. My name is Aron. I'm sitting down with Sorcha, my sister, and we are in County Clare in the home studio of the one and only seanachaí extraordinaire, Aindrias de Staic.
Hey, Aron, how's it going? Great to have you both here. We've had a great night of storytelling last night. And lovely morning here it is in County Clare.
It is indeed. Well, it wasn't very nice tonight, I have to say. You can feel all of the wind and the rain and the belting into the side of the house here.
That's true. You know, the Irish, in English it's called Castle Quarter, where my farm is, but the Irish is Bornagriha, top of the wind. And you can see, when you look out the window, you can see all the way east and up as far as Kilfenora, all the way west down to the Cliffs of Moher. And it's funny because the nearby town of Ennistimon is quite sheltered. It's in a valley, and the walkway where we just walked in and out of town there is in a valley. But actually here where I am is on the hill, because this cottage was called the herdsman's cottage. It was a herdsman for the McNamara estate. So I think the idea was that he could see out all the sheep and cattle and pigs. And so
you'd see it all. You'd see it all. Like, it's a beautiful walk down into
it's fab.
The walkway there, beautiful forestry, loads of oak, unfortunately.
Nice little fairy fort
Yeah.
down the bottom of the hill.
Yeah, and a native ring of trees around the fairy fort. I mean, there is a few sycamores, but there's a lot of oak, ash, and there's even elm, which is quite rare in some places.
And birch down below as well, isn't it?
We have birch and we have silver birch and beech,
Yeah, beautiful. Unfortunately, fair bit of cherry laurel, but...
Yeah, the cherry laurel is coming. I thought it was rhododendron, and we actually have a plan with the community to take some of that out.
Good.
It's not as simple as just cutting it. It has to be kind of cut and painted. And then on the road, of course, there's Japanese knotwood. So, you know, you've got the...
That's dangerous stuff,
It's a bit like when the World Cup is on, there's no avoiding the soccer. You'll have the invasive species coming in all the time, you know?
Yeah,
No avoiding them. Gotta deal with them.
I can't stop seeing it now since I joined the Gaelic Woodland Project. And Owen, the kind of founder of it, man, he's wealth of wisdom, like, but he's done an awful lot of methods of clearing the cherry laurel primarily.
Where is it, Cork or Dublin?
He's done a lot of stuff in Meath, but he's from Dublin.
We might get him down.
Yeah. We'll have to set up a medal here. But yeah, so last night we were in the Pavillion in Lisdoonvarna. Whoa, that was great. That was a great night.
It was good. It was lovely.
And wasn't there a great crowd out for storytelling on a midweek night?
On a Tuesday night.
Do you know what I mean? You had nearly 100 there last night, and it was just for a midweek, a Tuesday night in a small rural area. It was great, like.
And we turned the corner. We didn't know where we were going. We were following Google Maps. Turned the corner, and there's this old, decrepit,
kind of prefab shed on the
shed
way in.
Oh yeah.
And we were looking at it, going, "Oh Jesus, where's
where we are.
Where are we playing?"
And then you turn further around the corner and you see this lovely new community hall that's built there.
Beautiful.
It's a fantastic venue, the new Pavillion in
It is,
Lisdoonvarna.
yeah. It is, yeah. And they did it up nicely, like set out the candles and the tables, and everyone was comfortable, and beautiful sound there. I was really happy with the whole situation, and we're calling in the Beoutana stories and the turning of spring into summer, and you open the night with a beautiful story of Beoutana and the fairies.
Yeah, it's a story I've been doing now for a while, and of course you can only get a month or two out of it. You can kind of get April and a bit of May.
April and a bit of May, and then you
can
yeah. That's the thing with the seasonal stories. You kind of have to, you got to move them along. They don't last.
I used to do the horse dance story around Christmas because I had a bit of reference to the Mummers and St. Stephen's Day. And of course, you know, we're always so busy on Halloween. So it's nice to celebrate a fairy story in Baltana because we get so much talk about fairies and Halloween stuff. So Baltana is the other end of it.
It is the other end of it.
It's the other end of it. And it's as apparently as important in the ancient times.
Oh, totally, yeah.
Like the lighting of the fires at Bealtaine and the driving the cattle through them, and just that whole idea of the other world coming in. It was Samhain and Bealtaine were the two big ones, and like Samhain is way better remembered and celebrated in Ireland now. But like,
I
mean, there's a fair amount.
It's nice to bring in. Well, see, this is the thing that it's kind of coming back. Like people started at Ishnuk, but then as happened, I think as well with lighting the fires in Athboy, it gets big, and there's a level of big that kind of gets unmanageable.
Really?
They were finding that at Ishnuk. I think the last couple of years it was just kind of getting a little bit too big.
It's ticketed now, though, isn't it?
That's one of the ways of limiting it, because it's they're ancient sites. You can't be trampling it.
But that's why it's so community focused as well, and you're getting more and more Beoutana celebrations. More like you can see it. We just got asked to do a storytelling festival in Dunleary
Oh,
which
great.
you're doing as
Am
well.
I doing it?
You're doing it as
Oh,
well.
great.
Aidan rang me.
Oh, your man. I think I'm on the Friday night.
You're on the Friday the 12th.
You're on the Friday night, and we said we'd do the Sunday night.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll catch you on the way back.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm in Ennis time on the Sunday. But we'll be we might all catch up on the Friday.
We might catch you on Friday.
We'll link
Yeah,
up.
brilliant.
We'll
Exactly.
link up for
So that's
sure.
Dunleary on Friday the 12th
of May. Probably after this comes out. So we'll But we'll be doing other link ups in the future, no doubt. We keep on crossing paths. So we're in St. Patrick's Festival all together. And
that's right.
Yeah, up on stage together here as well. So plenty to look forward to, no doubt. So a few questions in this interview for you, seeing as we're here in your home place, and a few link-ins with, I suppose, ways of living life and what folklore or story and mythology might mean to you out in this kind of barren and beautiful landscape. Does it bring a certain level of understanding to your life, or do you find it's only performance and it's great fun just to do when you tell a story and go back to your normal life, or do you find a way of it kind of I don't know, helping out or kind of being present during the rest of your days here?
That's a good question, Aron, and I suppose there's no yes or no answer to these questions. It changes from day to day. Sometimes it can be like that. Like, I just want to be on the farm and in the woodlands and do my thing, and I don't want to be going to the cities for work. But the reality is we do have to go. But that's what was beautiful about the likes of last night, having ye coming down, and I love when I get to do stuff locally in Clare, Limerick and Tip. But equally, I have to take on the work in the likes of Galway and Dublin as well, and even London or wherever sometimes. I suppose what I find is that, like, the farming and working with the trees really fills my soul, as it does for everyone and anyone. But every now and again you'll learn, like, would say, just when I was walking up the field there when I was coming back here to do the podcast, and you were saying, I just happened to look down as I was crossing over all, and I saw a ladybird, and it's Bowen Day, God's little cow. And I started to remember all the things about that farmers love to see, the God's little cow. It's a lovely time of year to see it, and Bowen Day, because they say it's like a little cow because the spots in its back, but also it doesn't per se bring milk per se, but it brings a magic to farm, and it's a real good sign to see it, Other
eats the green fly and
eats the green fly, all the magic of the ladybird, So, and there was another day a few years ago when I just made, this was my grandfather's farm, left to my father and then subsequently left to me a few years ago. But there was one day, there was a few lads here, and they were lovely fellas, but they wanted to buy a bit of land off me. And they were saying, is it a yes or a no? And I thought, God, that's, they were from somewhere in the UK. I thought, isn't it great? They're so direct. I'd never be able to be like that. And I wanted to be like them. And they were saying, because I was saying, I don't know if I could sell it now. I could give you maybe 100-year lease, Because I was interested in doing something. But then the farmer who rents the land after me, a cousin of mine who has cattle on it, he turned up then a few hours later, and I was saying, there was people here, and I asked him, what did he think? And he answered me and said, well, I tell you now, there was a fella down near me, he was below in May, and he saw land, and he was regretted it then because, he lost blah, blah, blah. And he said, but you could be lucky too. There was another man over the road, and he sold the site, and he got a great bit of money for it, and it helped him build a house. And the other thing is, and he went on stories, and I think that's the other thing, when you're in the farming community, and you hear all what we would call the nahans, or the nahanakancha, the way people talk, the way they'd say things, like, or the way that, like, the way we talk around in stories and the way Irish people talk around in circles. Yeah. So you pick up all that as well when you're farming, working with people. Like, I was in a Zoom with Teagasc, it was the organic farming Zoom, and the way the lads were on, and sometimes they'd say, and when will the cheque be paid? They were so direct about the money.
Right.
Whereas, when you're in the arts, it's all, so it's really important that, it's going to be down attention.
Whenever you can, and what do you think yourselves, and what kind of a budget are you working, and have you any funding, and we'll do it for mates rates, I mean, can we get you're just fucking...
So I love the difference that farming is so different to working in the arts, and I love learning in that world, in farming and with nature, and even the things like I think Fuishog is the Irish for ash tree, so relearning again the old words in Irish for the different trees, putting it together in stories, the way we'd say, like, all the flower and fauna, and then had a blash to the doogie and dana, like mixing it up, mixing relearning words and nahanakancha and things that make sense in different languages and putting them together. So I like the way the two feed into each other. 'Tis its own kind of biosphere, the the way the farming helps the storytelling and the storytelling helps the farming.
That's a beautiful answer. Yeah, thanks, Andreas. I thought you'd have a go in for that because I suppose there's kind of like there's a big kind of, I don't know, sort of, you could probably speak more on this, but like how people are trying to bring back the way of walking with mythology and walking through mythology and finding your kind of steps in the not only the pagan but the kind of the belief systems that are older and ways of kind of aligning your life more around the seasonal living and kind of things. Which is interesting as well, because that's what the stories remind you to do as well. You know, they remind you to actually look forward to the summer.
People didn't have a choice. You know, I mean, this is kind of the strange thing. I think people, for a long time living here, didn't have a choice. They didn't have any choice to be in harmony with the seasons, because if you decided, well, I'm going to go for a swim in midwinter, you would just die. You would just die.
Yeah.
You'd just be dead. Whereas these days you can go into, you can have an electric kettle boiling hot water to make a hot water bottle, and you can go inside to a heated house and you can put your blankets on and your duvet on and you can warm yourself back up again and your electric heating and your electric blanket. But I think there is a certain, I think human beings, like, we're very clever little beasties, but we get ourselves into trouble then because we forget that we are beasties. We forget that we're animals.
Yeah, we do.
We forget that we're creatures, and we kind of get notions about things. And we build very nice systems around ourselves to pretend that we're not actually beholden to nature at all. And I think people are starting to kind of realise, I think a lot of people are starting to realise that is a nonsense, because there's a level at which we can't exist without the fucking planet. And we're pushing it to that level. We're pushing it to its limit.
And it's interesting that it's come full circle. People are starting to come around to it now, and it's interesting what you mentioned about the seasons. There was a girl here the other day where we were planting stuff, and she went for a swim in Lahinch around 9 or 10 at night, and I just called into her there, and she's sick. You know, because the reason April Fool is usually the 1st of April, but April can make a fool of you, because you think, oh, summer's coming now. Oh, look at the fine stretch in the evening, and you go swimming late at night. You go out without your jumper. You don't bother lighting the fire, and next thing you have a cold. And just
our father's dying sick with a cold.
Was he out swimming?
Well, he wasn't out swimming, but he caught a cold. Yeah. He got a bug. Like.
But you see, do you know what we call that? There's a thing we call, it's called Musha Shachan and Scaravine. I used to think that, like, beware of the Scaravine. When I thought it was often if you go out, say, this time of year with just a t-shirt on you, and I thought the scaravine was the draft that comes in around your kidneys. Yeah, people say, mind the scaravine, or I thought it was, because it sounds like scurvy, so I thought it was maybe a disease you get in your kidneys at this time of year. But what the scaravine is it's called Isgarav E Amshar Nuguch. It comes from the old seanachaí. Isgarav E Amshar Nuguch. Garav is rough, like in Spanish we say guaro, Garav. It's just beginning Garav, bit rough. So Isgarav E. Rough is she, the weather of the cuckoo. So, when you start hearing the cuckoo and the swallows landed in from sub-Saharan Africa, and you think, oh, Jesus, summer's in, let me go out in my t-shirt. I go out bringing in hay, I go out, doing the herding, and you've got a draft coming in around your kidney. It's Garavi Amshar. Rough is the weather of the cuckoo. And so the scaravine then is the
contraction of that.
Exactly. I thought it was scurvy or something, but it's actually scaravine. Scaravine. You'd hear a lot around here, and you'd hear a lot in Cork and Kerry as well as scaravine. So you have to watch for the scaravine, you know. So, and then people say to me then, oh, you're not vegan, you eat a lot of fish. Or then in summer they'll see me eating salads, and I won't eat much meat in summer. And they say, oh, I didn't know you were vegan. I said, I'm not. And then in winter, I eat a load of lamb stews, because I've developed this thing since moving back to the farm now. I eat with the seasons. So you can imagine how cold it is here in the winter. Yeah. So I have a stove there, and I get bones off the butcher, and I make a big bone broth. So I have a lot of animal fat, but not too much. And again, no, not too many animals are being killed for it, because I'm getting the bones off the butcher. So during the winter, I'd have a small bit of meat because it's good for my stomach. I'd have loads of bone broth. And then all the root veg that's coming in the winter from the garden. So like the spuds, but particularly parsnips, carrots.
Turnips.
We turn loads of turnips and sweets. All that root veg goes in, and they soak into the grease of the bone broth, right? And that keeps, and that's really warm. It's sitting there, and I have the stove on all the way for keeping warm. So that'll heat me during the winter. Then around this time of the year, then, as you could see the salad that you had last night, I move on to the fish dish, and then in high summer I go high raw. So June, July, I'd be only eating from the garden, only eating the greens, and you get really high off it, because your whole body comes alive. You're eating living foods, and then around August then in comes the mackerel. And that'll be the first kind of animal or fish that I'll eat then for about 6 or 7 weeks.
Wow.
You see? So I'm not like going extreme meat eater like someone who has to go to the gym and eat like loads of eggs and protein.
Yeah.
But also I'm not going vegan or raw in the middle of the winter when I get a cold and I'd be all snotty.
Yeah, but it's also, there's no imported foods. There's no like there's no kind of growth.
Yeah, you're keeping it local and keeping it. I mean,
And
your own
seasonal.
garden is as local as you can get, and as seasonal as you can get.
So I'm eating with the seasons. No, it works for me. It mightn't work for everyone. But like some people could go raw vegan all year. Some people can eat meat all year.
Yeah.
But for me,
God listen to the body. Yeah, God listen to the body.
and when you're
body and the seasons.
and exposed to the seasons like this, there's no escaping them, you know. Great.
Yeah, you are very up here on this.
Yeah.
There is no shelter from the seasons. You're right.
Gorgeous, but
Right
it's
out
price, I
there.
suppose.
It's a fantastic view. It's a lovely spot.
We'll have to take a few photographs now and put them up so people will be like, what are y'all looking at?
Yeah,
We didn't record it now. Although it'll never do it justice. You said one thing earlier on about I suppose the kind of sacredness of the land and the season, the animals, the kind of the biodiversity, and and it's kind of funny with the stories, like the story told last night of going into the summer, and the fact that changelings and these kings of the fairies, the queen of the fairies, they land in the swan, the stag, all these foxes and the badgers, they're running around and they take off their animal skins and they become this troop of fairies.
Yeah.
Like that's adding another level of respect to the inhabitants, the furry creatures. It's kind of going, they're there now, they're living away, they're doing magic in their own way.
Yeah.
And, coming into their season now, they're to be more respected or more listened to, more watched, or more just excited to watch and witness, and you kind of just see a portal opening up in your own imagination, watching them and seeing them, I don't know, but yeah, it's...
Yeah, there's a magic. I mean, when we were kids, like, I didn't always grow up in Clare, but when we'd come back here with my father, when we'd see a hare in a field, it'd be really special, and there's so much folklore with the hare, as you know, and the hare on the moon, and they often say, particularly here in Clare, there's a great tradition of, like, stories with the hare. You'd see it, there's an old book, I have it there somewhere, Irish language stories, Laura Stefan, and a lot of the stories that were collected around here and over the road there between here and Dublin and Luch, you'd often find the hare and is it Gira or Girarua, and obviously the cunyin as well, to a lesser extent the rabbit. So there's a magic to those animals, and there's a great life when you see them, like the fairy fort that you saw below there. I was down there one day, and I was kind of, there was talk of different things coming through it, like ESP lines and different wires and stuff, and I was saying, geez, I don't know if I can allow that now. But at the same time, dealing with ESP, you didn't want to be saying, I can't do this or I can't do that. And a friend of mine was down there with me, guy from Lachichos, Matty Kelly. He's great knowledge of astrological stuff and folklore, and he said, the entrance to the east is be at the east. And I said, entrance to Ringford? I thought it was only a mound and a hill. Yeah, and we went over, and sure enough, there was a lump of briars, right? And out of that, at that moment, a big hare jumped out. And ran across the field. And I was like, wow. And I knew then I had to protect it, so they got the ESP to reroute slightly. But to get them to reroute around it, And it was things like that, when, those signs and that magic that you get from animals like the hare, And seeing that we all know the fairies live more in our subconscious and in the other world than in the physical animal world. But animals, like humans, can carry those spirits, and that's why you'll see dogs and cats sometimes behaving strangely when they, like you'll
looking
often
at
see
things that you can't see, or
yeah. I used to see a dog who used to bark at an evil spirit, like up in North Galway, and I never said it to anyone. And then one day, another person in the house had a dream about it, So you'd see dogs can see things. And cats, of course, there's loads of stuff about cats in folklore. Yeah. Cats were often considered evil, but also they were very intuitive, Yeah. And I think
the hair hopping out of the front of the fairy fort.
Stop, yeah. That's and the funny thing was, it was talked about recently, 100 years ago at the time of the Troubles, when the Black and Tans were going around looking for people. The old people knew that those fairy forts were special and you wouldn't go near them. But obviously, if the Black and Tans were coming, so they opened some of them and people used to hide out in them. Yeah. Irish people often hid in the hills. Yeah, we'd often go back to our nature in that way. Even the time the Black and Tans burnt out Lahinch there, the people ran for the dunes, towns and cities only came with the Vikings. Before that, we all lived hunter-gatherer. Like the Irish, for to go out the country is Golama, Fuin Tua. You're going out under your tribe.
Fuin Tua,
Tua, like Tua Clay around here, or Tua de Denan,
the people could... Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, the link that you find between Oscuelga and English is beautiful. Like, and I know you tell stories, yeah, and you get specific commissions, and you work Oscuelga when you do as well. But like, it must massively inform how you kind of translate the stories, or how you're kind of telling the stories, or how it comes out. Like between the fluidness of your Irish. I know you say you have to work on it, but like also the kind of the translations that are happening in your head. Do you find that if you think about a story in Oscuelga, do you then tell it differently as Perla, or is there?
Each language will bring something different out of it, you know. It'd be the same if you were translating, say, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, or I was just in Colombia there where they were talking about this great storyteller, Fernandez Soto Patricia, and he, you know, when his stuff gets translated English, and Spanish people would say, oh, you know, you missed something in the translation. And some of the projects I work in, you're taking stories in very old Irish and you're translating them to English, but then you might translate them back into Irish, but you're going back to the original Old Irish and seeing how much of that can you bring on, you know? So like often it won't say couple for horse, it'll say ach, E-S-C-H, which is an old word for like a hawk. I think the...
Oh yeah, the ach is the water horse.
Yeah. And
I often wondered about that. I didn't know ach was an old word for
well, you know,
horse.
in English they say nag.
Yeah.
They call an ach.
An ach is a
Yeah,
nag.
it comes from nag. Nag, the word in English nag comes from ach. Yeah. And funny, an achra, the place where the horse go, would be like they say knacker's yard, or even the derogatory term. Yeah, actually John O'Connor's was talking about that the other day there in Dublin here at Finbar Fury. So you see, a lot of these old words, you'd see ach, but there'd be an awful lot of that in the folklore. You'd see old words that aren't used quite as much, or you'd see references to kind of like old farming things like horses' hoofs or donkeys and carts and stuff, words that we might, not just that we wouldn't use the word, it'd be like as old to us as like the Nokia, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It'd be our ESAT Digiphone, you know, things, technology changes. So the stories that were popular 100 years ago.
Well, we had a very funny one last night, and God only knows what it did was once said, like, or if there was ever a chant, but we had a moment just before going on stage last night where we were trying to remember the start of the chant, the fee in the chant, or the Dord Fian,
which
was Nyart an Gaig, like strength of the limb.
Glanarg.
Glanarg first, yeah.
Glanarg.
Like the clean heart, or
pure heart.
Pure heart, thank you.
Yeah. Nyart an egg.
Nyart an egg, strengthen our limbs.
And Bart the rare our mriher.
Truth to our word.
Yes, deeds to match our word was the translation.
It's been translated to strength of limb, purity of heart, and deeds to match our word.
Is the English, but Oisin found the Irish a couple of years back.
But didn't you nearly start translating it back into Irish, and we're like, no.
Yeah. We did. We kind of started, and then we looked it up. We found it anyway.
Because it's an automatic response to go, what's that? Oh, I'll change it over, and you kind of go back to. Oh, and you were saying in a different way, like, hang on there, because it's more poetic. The cleanness of your heart. Like, you know,
you see, you could leave it all in Old Irish, but then who'd understand it? Like, who has time?
This is it.
And then at the same time, so for me, if I'm doing stuff in Irish language, it's about making it accessible, you know. So I'll often do stuff bilingually. So if I'm doing stuff in English, it'll always have a few words of Irish. And if I'm doing stuff in Irish, it has to be simple, not for everyone else, but for me as well. Like, I didn't grow up in Connemara, but there was a small Gaeltacht at that time called Gaeltacht an Achre. We mentioned about the horse. So that's how I know that word. I grew up for a while in the edge of Galway City, but I was sent to national school out the Tuam Road. There was a Gaeltacht there, Castlegar, Menlo is still a Gaeltacht area, but I suppose.
Yeah, sure, I know. I stayed in the Menlo apartments just beside that Gaeltacht when I was in college.
That's right, and you passed the sign that says on Gaeltacht.
I used to walk down and look, it's a Gaeltacht.
It's still technically, like when I was young, there was native speakers, and when Galway won the hurling in 1980, the famous speech was Muintir na Gaillimhe, because you won't often get a hurling parish that's in the Gaeltacht, because generally the hurling in Galway would be east and south, and the Gaeltacht would be north and west. But Castlegar was a kind of a unique one at the time in the 80s, and it was kind of, you didn't really have Gael skills at that time. It was just a school in the Gaeltacht.
We just found out that more people in America listen to our podcasts than Irish people.
All right.
So maybe I'll just explain two things. A Gaeltacht is an area in Ireland where Irish language is spoken the most.
Predominantly. Technically, in theory, Ireland is a bilingual country. The official languages are both Irish and English.
And a Gael Skull is a school. It can be anywhere in Ireland.
A Gael Tucht is a place where Irish predominates. They are shrinking.
And they're the rural areas, whereas the Gael Skull can often be more in the urban areas.
Yeah, it can be anywhere really.
Gael Skull can be anywhere because it's a school where they teach through Irish.
Yeah, and I suppose we're a bit like Quebec. You know, the way they have a bit of it that speak French and bits that speak
similar thing.
You get that also. The Basque country has area, you know, bits of it where they won't speak Spanish, and then there's other bits of it where they'll say, "Oh yeah, we're Basque, but we don't speak Basque."
Catalonia.
Catalonia, Catalan.
They don't want you to speak Spanish to them at all.
Yeah, so we're kind of like one of those countries, I suppose. But yeah, the majority of us are kind of, you know, can speak most 2 languages, but I suppose it is hard for people who are not used to Irish to pick it up, you know. It's a difficult language, but now everyone is picking up a few words here and there.
Yeah, even just having the couple of words is...
Yeah, a couple of focal.
You know.
And you understand it a bit better.
I feel like you know more. I feel like we all know more than we think we do as well.
Yeah.
You know, you were saying that with that big academic tome you were reading through, but like I think it is that thing of, you know, we all learned it. We all learn it in school in Ireland. You learn it in school. As is usual where you teach a language in school, it's hard to grasp it because language is for communication, and if you learn it out of a book, a lot of the time it's not very inspiring. I know people give out about the curriculum, but I just think learning a language in a classroom is always going to be harder.
Yeah.
You know, you can learn Spanish by watching a movie in Spanish or going to Spain and speaking to people. You know, you kind of learn. You have to learn a language by using it.
Yeah.
And talking through it.
Well, thankfully they're changing it now with Irish, where we are starting to kind of learn it by talking. And the media has caught up. You know, we have a TV station, we have a radio station, we have areas where people can delve into the language quite easily, you know.
Yeah.
But it's still a hard language. Like Spanish is so easy.
Yeah, I know.
I go to Colombia and I come back nearly fluent. Like,
this is it.
Well, that's an exaggeration.
But you're able to chat away, like,
you know. Muy tranquilo.
Yeah. You have your couple of words in Spanish.
But then in Colombia, they have loads of indigenous languages.
They do, you know, and they'll throw in the couple of the indigenous languages as well.
You really fuck you up.
Inca and
So I want to hear a bit more about your Colombian trip, because we were establishing you are a wild and westerly seanachaí. You have the language of your home place and the one that was forced upon our nation, and also you're taking the Irish traditions to South America. This is fantastic. What happened there now?
Well, it was just a lucky trip, really. I was just walking the walk in from town that you know there where I just met you.
And someone said, "Come here, let's go to Colombia."
Yeah, literally it was. There was a lad came up to me called Owen Vaughan, and I hadn't seen him in 20 years. We were in college together in Galway in the 90s, when what's now known as the GMIT was in the Galway RTC. And there was you must have heard of John Donoghue, Dr. John, who wrote the book on Cara.
Yeah.
So before John published the book on Cara, he ran this course in Galway called Heritage Studies. And I was studying it. I'm
told
actually
me that
graduate. And we had no idea how special or how rare. And it was John O'Donoghue was the first one to encourage me with storytelling, because I didn't know in those days I was dyslexic, you know. But when we'd be doing presentations, he could say you can submit 200, you know, words or 200 pages or whatever it was, or you can present it in class, you know. And some people were more comfortable to go typing it up. Typing was kind of new at the time, and I forget now, some lecturers wouldn't accept handwritten stuff. I'm talking about 1998, 1999. So there was a guy in the class called Jacob Struben, and he used to type up everybody's thing. He was German background, so he was very functional and industrial. But anyway, I'd never have mind doing, but I'd have loads of ideas, of course. No, and again, they didn't have terms like dyslexia, ADHD, dyspraxia. None of that was in the lexicon at the time. You were just bowled, scattered, crazy. You were a kiola, and your head was full of music. But Jono liked people in the class like myself and the other lads who were good crack, you know, and who were contributing. He didn't always expect us to have stuff typed up, so you were allowed to do presentations. Class. And I was big into Irish music at the time, so I was doing this presentation on Irish music, and it was about the night that the session broke out. I used to love, you can remember the time before the mobile phone, before the internet, before Sky Sports TV, sessions used to break out.
Yeah.
You know, someone would sing a song in a pub, someone would tell a story, then someone would bring in the guitar, then someone else would say, "Run up for the accordion," or "Jeez, there's a fiddle up in the attic." You know, and a session would come together in a house or in a pub like that. And I was kind of doing a presentation about that, about Irish music, because my father grew up here in Clare and he talked so much about East Clare and West Clare. When I grew up in South Mayo, I used to have to kind of find it. There was equally a huge musical tradition, but you had to just work a bit harder and dig a bit deeper. So I was doing a presentation all about this. Where I grew up was kind of North Connemara, South Mayo, near Cong, we'll say, the famous Battle of Ventry. So I was doing something about that. And John would say to me, "Great, Andreas, and who was up in the rafters looking down at you?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Oh, the fairies. Yes, tell us more." So he would encourage this kind of
invention. Yeah. The imagination and the bringing in the other traditions.
Exactly. He was always at that. Or he'd come into class and he'd write on the board, "Landscape has presence and memory. Discuss." And he'd ask us to talk the famine ridges, and before that, yes. And next thing we'd be back to the Dan and the Fair Bullard. He loved the ancient stories. So there was all this great stuff with John, and where does the land and the subconscious meet, And so it was really great. Like, so I hadn't seen some of my classmates in years. Now some of the lads like Colm Shannon in Boston and different lads that I'd know, I'd be in contact with, but some of the lads I haven't seen in years. And then like that, this guy Owen Vaughan came up to me just down the road there. He was teaching in the Steiner School and he said, "We're going to Columbia." He said himself and a few other lads were going to Columbia. They're lads from around Clarecastle, Owen Vaughan from Clarecastle, Owen Brennan from Clarecastle, and Barry Corbett from Clooney Quinn, just outside Ennis. And they were going to teach in hurling and Gaelic football in Columbia. I know, they go through it.
God.
I know, they're gas. Like, that's, Clare people are so proud of their
Brilliant.
heritage.
That's great.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, and they asked me would I come along, do a bit of music, storytelling and translating. Because like, yo hablo español, pero no mucho. I suppose because I grew up as Irish as a first language, I was lucky, if you grow up bilingually, you can pick up another language, maybe they say. So, and I'd been working with Moises, a great Spanish percussionist down in Alicante in January. So nice. I speak all right Spanish. Now, they found out when we got there my Spanish wasn't as good as they thought. But and again, I suppose because when we were kids, my father lived in San Francisco in the 90s in the Mission District. He was a writer, Eddie Stack.
Right, yeah,
so he used to have a bit of Spanish.
I have his book.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I have his book. So I picked up a bit of Spanish as a child. So anyway, next thing we're off to Columbia. And oh my God, the crack. So we start off in the morning, the lads be teaching football and hurling, and we'd say for sliotar, we'd say pilote pequeño, like small ball, and balón was the Gaelic football, big one. Lanza a piede, like kick it with your foot, and la manos was the hands. And so we're teaching this for a few hours, and then I do a bit of a music workshop. I'd play a jig, I'd play a reel, we'd have all the kids sitting down, and just when the kids start to be getting a bit hyper, I'd pull out the jaw harp, and I go ring dang dang, and I give a lash, and then they go, "What's that?" And then I'd start to say, "Okay, we'll do a bit of lilting." So then we do a lilting, and we might do an easy song like, the one that goes, and I'd say, "Lilting es un música de la boca, no es mucho palabras." It doesn't have much words. So I was kind of teaching Irish music like that. And then we didn't really get into the storytelling until the lads we were in Cartagena down in the Caribbean. Then they went to Cali. And then I went up to Medellin, and in Medellin I was teaching third level in the university there. There's a great girl there called Carolina who was from Colombia, but she had studied in Limerick, so she hooked up a few classes, and they were a bit some of the people that were interested in Irish music, they're a bit more advanced in terms of their knowledge of Irish music and culture.
Okay, wow.
So we were able to talk about the history of the music and the various folklore around certain tunes and traditions. Yeah, gorgeous. So it was great.
And was that an initiative from County Clare, or what was it?
Yeah, the lads have a group called Go Gaelic, and they were very lucky that, like, when we got in touch with the Irish Embassy, there was some very active people there. There was a girl called Orla, a lady who had started, who was very active in her job, and kind of the Irish Embassy were quite happy about this initiative, and they took it on. And like, the lads have loads of experience teaching. They're teachers themselves, and their coaches. Like Barry Corbett I think he maybe coaches local hurling clubs in Clare and maybe underage at county level. And same with Owen Brennan they're all professional coaches. Class. And they also can teach dancing. They can teach, Clare people are like, they could do Siege of Venice. I remember when I was a kid in San Francisco, and at the time Merton Hayes was up in Seattle, and great musician from East Clare who was a huge following on the west coast of America, Andrew McNamara, a great box player. And the lads were doing a gig in the Plough and Stars in San Francisco, and there was a lot of people, drinking around the pool table. And next thing, when the musicians started to play some tune like the Bucks of Ardmore or Cooley's Reel, these lads, lads like about what the age we are now, maybe a bit younger, that'd be drinking Budweiser, and next thing they picked up the pool table, rammed into the corner, and a set dance broke out. 4 opposite 4 at a Clare set, just like that. Really super fit, like yeah, they were from like Killinina or Fecal or somewhere in East Clare. So you'd always be surprised at how much like some people still have, a story or a tune or a set dance in them.
The set dance is special, like that takes fucking practice, like.
Well, it's this
and community, like, but there is a great community,
community.
In Clare, in fairness, and you like the fact the Flack Yole has been there so many times, and it's brilliant when it's in Ennis. I mean, like, it's set up for it, like, and everyone's so proud of it when they're here as well, and they always just see the musicians coming out their afters, dancing. You're like, I didn't know there was so much of it there until you see it.
Yeah, Kerry is a great set dance as well.
Course,
There's a place in Mayo then called Ahamore, but what you will see is when people have it and it'll break out in them, like they say in Irish, Brishnan Duchas Trichul in the Chwich, which means nature will break through the eyes of a cat. And then you'll hear sometimes in the travelling community, and they'll say nature will break through the pole of an axe. So it's kind of slightly mistranslated, but equally poetic,
Beautiful.
That's good.
Sorry, could you have any questions for Andreas?
Do I have any questions for Andreas?
Sorcha has been a bit off today.
Listen, no, it's Aron and Aroff. It's Sorcha and Sorchant.
Lovely.
She's more on a Sorcha
More on a Sorchant morning. Yes, all of this nature is beautiful, but as usual, I am allergic to it. The old eyes are at me now. Which is kind of the summer.
Need to get some local burn honey for you.
That's what we need to get. Local honey. I had a hookup in Dublin for a bit actually, but it went away again.
Did that waxy honey you had last night any good?
Do you know what? It probably did me good last night.
Try a big lump of it. Another lump now before we
get on the road.
Well, we're on the road at the moment, and I've 5 quick fire questions for Andreas. Don't want you to think about them too quickly, right?
Yeah.
We're just going to do a quick fire question round.
Perfect.
And okay, so what's your favourite colour?
Kind of maroon purple with like a faded kind of it'd be like not really a purple, like an orangey red terracotta that's slightly faded in the sun.
Nice.
Kind of like the purpley grey Burren Cliffs.
That was purple grey, not orange grey.
Yeah, orange. Okay, very, very, very difficult. Okay, favorite food.
Mackerel, I'd say, but only once a year when it comes in fresh. I would never eat mackerel. I would never buy mackerel on a fish counter. Never. I'd catch my own in August, September, and I'd eat it. And I go on maybe a raw food diet a few weeks before it's coming in, so that when it comes in, I wouldn't have eaten a meat or a fish in a long time, and I really enjoy it grilled with a bit of rosemary from the garden and thyme. Mackerel.
Oh.
One tune, if you had to listen to it for the rest of your life. Tune or song?
Well, tune or song, I mean, that's huge difference there. I mean, tunes, you're talking solely instrumental. Songs, you could be talking English, Irish, Spanish.
Okay, pick one each. You get
one of each.
One of each.
One of each. I mean, it changes every day. If it was a song, modern song in English, let's go for 2:30 by the Stunning. A tune. It's a tune that my great-grandmother from Lachichos plays called Sporting Nell. And it goes from a D minor to a C major, and she plays with the West Clare Draw. She left Lachichos in the 20s after the burning of Lachichos by the Black and Tans, and went to America and came back with, she had an Italian boyfriend. She came back with the Italian fiddle. She was meant to go back to America. I won't give you her whole life story.
I love
but
it.
Basically, at the time, the Sligo style had become the real dominant style in trad, because let's be great players, Michael Coleman, Michael Gorman, all the great players, but a lot of the players like Paddy Killord and all them had recorded in America, in New York, and their records were available and they were being playing on radio. But my grandmother said, do you know what? She was in Dublin one day in the late 40s, early 50s, and she passed by Eamon Andrews Studios in Capel Street. She was up, I think, Clare were in a hurling final in 51, and she just said, that's it, she make an album, reels on one side and jigs on the other side. So we've got this great recording of her playing real old West Clare tunes. So that's probably my favourite tune.
We might have to get you to play it. Okay, one thing you could not give up.
I suppose chocolate. I mean, I'm a chocoholic, I'm a recovering chocoholic, and I try. I do a day or two with no chocolate, but I just love it, and I treat myself. Chocolate's my treat. It's my go-to.
One thing you wish you could give up.
Ooh, yeah, it's a kind of.
You don't want to give up.
Okay, I know it is. I'm not going to say anything rude in the presence of a beautiful lady. Scrolling through the social media late at night. That's the devil.
That's devil. Accidentally 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Picking up the phone, looking from email to Instagram to WhatsApp, looking for a bit of dopamine, hitting and checking the inboxes and putting it down.
Picking up your phone to send a text, and then 3 hours later you're like, what the fuck did I pick up my phone for?
Exactly.
To send a text.
You pick it up to tell someone, you think, no, I'll leave a voice message for that person because it's midnight, I'm on the pillow, I'll just do this and I'll go to bed. And next thing you go, I wonder did that message come in, I'll check that email. I'll check Instagram, I'll have to post a thing about a gig. And still not even doing the proper posting or texting.
And then you've never sent the message you meant to.
Never sent the message.
Okay, 2 last questions. What is fuck it, what was the second last question?
You forgot it. This is rapid fire. You can't do the one that you forgot. Last question.
Your favourite story?
No, that also changes. There's a big long story that I'm working on at the minute. It's like one of those stories that takes a night or two to tell it. It's called Shocked Schläft in the North, the 7 Hills of Gold. Ooh. And in the book, it was collected by Delargy when he came down here in the 30s from a man called Stefano Hiller, a storyteller over in Luch, say between here and Dublin. And it's not yet my fully favourite, but each time I look at it I have to try and find new things in it.
So I actually came out with one recently. Someone asked me what's my favourite story, and I could because we're on the road at the moment, we're working through the Battle of Ventry, and we're thinking it out, and we're thinking what's the opposition, what's the context, what are the the plot points we want to leave in, take out. I think it's oftentimes the one I'm working on is my favourite story. The one that I'm mulling over that I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's the one that you're playing with because it's the one that is interesting and you're finding those kind of layers to is always the most interesting one. So whatever one you're working on.
Yeah,
mighty.
So I suppose Shocked Schläft in the North is a biggie at the moment, and I'm working on that one.
Well, we might get to tell a story that you told last night.
Oh yes, indeed.
Right.
Well,
thank you very much for listening to the Candlelit Tales podcast. We're joined by Aindrias de Staic. Thanks so much for hopping on the podcast.
Thanks for coming down.
We'll be doing more stuff. I think you can go to patreon.com/Candlelit Tales if you want to throw us a few bob and help us get on the road again. Or
buy me some local honey.
Buy some local honey.
I can give you the waxy stuff now.
Or you can go on to candlelittales.ie and follow the PayPal link to send us a one-time donation. Or you can follow us on Instaface, Twitter.
And we'll link Andreas's stuff in the show notes there.
Will indeed.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot.
Nice one.
Till next time.
Ciao.